I never thought getting fired would be the best thing that ever happened to me." James Carter stared directly into the camera, his eyes reflecting both pain and unexpected joy. "But when your boss shows up at your doorstep on a rainy Sunday night with your termination papers in one hand and dinner in the other, well, that's when you realize you've been missing something important all along." He smiled, the kind of smile that comes after surviving a storm. "And trust me, what happened next changed everything." 3 months earlier, James was drowning. Not literally, but in every other sense that mattered. As a single father to 8-year-old Emma after his wife's death 2 years ago, he was barely keeping his head above water. His position as senior marketing director at Horizon Media demanded 60-hour workweeks, while Emma needed a father who was present, not just physically but emotionally. James had always been the kind of man who solved problems with a quick wit and a quicker smile. At 36, he still maintained the athletic build from his college swimming days, though he rarely had time for the gym anymore. His fair skin often looked pale from too many hours under office fluorescents, and the subtle circles under his eyes told the story of sleepless nights spent either working or checking on Emma after her nightmares. Still, when he smiled, really smiled, not the professional mask he wore at meetings, his entire face transformed, revealing the man he used to be before grief carved its permanent lines into his expression. "Daddy, you promised we'd go to the science fair together," Emma said one morning, her small voice cutting through his concentration as he prepared for an early meeting. Emma was her mother's daughter, same curious brown eyes, same determined chin, same inability to let anything go once she'd set her mind to it. James glanced at his watch and felt his stomach drop. I'm so sorry. I have this presentation that I can't miss. Mrs. Peterson will take you, and I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise." The disappointment in Emma's eyes was becoming all too familiar. She nodded silently and returned to her cereal, her shoulders slumped in a way no 8-year-olds should be. She twisted her mother's old bracelet around her tiny wrist, a nervous habit she'd developed after Sarah died. What James didn't know was that his new boss, Olivia Mitchell, had been watching him closely. With her long, silky white blonde hair that she typically wore in a professional updo and a commanding presence that filled any room she entered, Olivia was intimidating to most of her employees. She had taken over as CEO just 6 months ago and was already making significant changes to the company culture. At 34, Olivia had climbed the corporate ladder with remarkable speed, earning both admiration and resentment along the way. Her perfect figure was always impeccably dressed in designer suits that somehow managed to be both professional and feminine. But it was her eyes, a startling shade of green that seemed to see right through pretense, that made people nervous. Olivia didn't suffer fools, didn't tolerate excuses, and didn't miss details. Ever. Could James balance being both the employee Olivia needed and the father Emma deserved? Or would he lose everything trying to please everyone but himself? The answer would come sooner than he expected, and in a way he never could have imagined. At work that day, Olivia stopped by James's office. "The Henderson campaign presentation was excellent," she said, leaning against his doorframe. "You have a real talent for understanding what clients need before they know it themselves." "Thank you," James replied, barely looking up from his computer. "Just doing my job." His fingers continued typing, the rapid-fire click-clack a barrier between them. Olivia lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Some of us are grabbing drinks after work to celebrate landing the account. You should join us." There was something in her tone, a slight softening that would have been imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent years reading people for a living. James finally looked up, noticing how the afternoon light caught in her hair, giving it an almost ethereal glow. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to appreciate how her tailored suit complemented her perfect figure. Then reality crashed back in. "I appreciate the invitation, but I need to get home to Emma. Another time, perhaps." He offered his professional smile, the one that reached his mouth but not his eyes. Something flickered across Olivia's face, disappointment? Frustration? She nodded and left without another word, her heels clicking a precise rhythm down the hallway. If you're finding yourself invested in James's struggle between work and family, hit that like button. I'd love to know if you've ever felt torn between different responsibilities in your life. The following weeks brought more missed signals. Olivia would bring coffee to his desk, "You looked tired in the morning meeting," or ask his opinion on matters outside his department. She extended lunch meetings just a little longer than necessary, and once, she even asked about Emma. "How's your daughter handling the science project she was working on?" Olivia asked, lingering after a budget meeting. She'd worn her hair down that day, a rare occurrence that had the entire office buzzing with speculation. James looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that? You mentioned it in passing a few weeks ago." "I listen when my team talks, James." She had a habit of playing with her grandmother's ring when she was trying to appear casual, a tell that James might have noticed if he hadn't been so wrapped up in his own world. He felt a twinge of something unfamiliar, a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. But before he could examine it further, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma's teacher about a fever, and the moment was gone. "I need to go," he said, already packing his laptop. "Emma's sick." Olivia nodded, stepping back. "Of course. Family comes first." The words seemed to carry a weight beyond their simple meaning. What James failed to notice was how Olivia's eyes followed him whenever he entered a room, or how she created opportunities for them to work together. He was too consumed by guilt over his parenting and grief over his lost wife to recognize the signs. Too busy using his charismatic humor as armor against any real connection. Olivia, for her part, had her own reasons for keeping people at a distance. Raised by a single father after her mother abandoned them when she was 12, she'd learned early that vulnerability was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her rise through the corporate ranks had been fueled by a determination to never need anyone, a philosophy that had served her well professionally but left her personal life a carefully maintained desert. Then came the Henderson crisis. Their biggest client was threatening to pull their account after a miscommunication about campaign timing. James worked through the weekend, canceling his plans with Emma yet again. By Sunday evening, he had salvaged the situation, but at what cost? Emma had barely spoken to him all weekend, retreating into her room with books and disappointment. As he sat on his couch, exhausted and emotionally drained, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw Olivia standing on his porch, rain dripping from her hair, which was down for once and framing her face in wet strands. She held a folder in one hand and what looked like take-out bags in the other. When he opened the door, she didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, set down the food, and thrust the folder into his hands. "You're fired," she announced, her voice echoing in his modest entryway. Without her usual heels, she was shorter than he expected, but no less formidable. James felt the floor drop from beneath him. "What?" "The Henderson situation is fixed." "I worked all weekend." "Exactly," Olivia interrupted, pushing a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "You worked all weekend on something that shouldn't have been your problem in the first place. You're fired as senior marketing director because I'm promoting you to creative director with flexible hours and the option to work from home 3 days a week." James stared at her, uncomprehending. "I don't understand." For once, his quick wit failed him completely. "Then let me be clearer," Olivia said, stepping closer. The scent of rain and something distinctly her, vanilla and sandalwood, filled the space between them. "I've been trying to tell you for months that I see you, not just your work, but you. The dedicated father who's killing himself trying to be everything for everyone. The brilliant marketer who solves problems no one else can touch. The man who brings coffee to the entire team but never remembers to eat lunch himself." The folder contained not termination papers but a new contract with better terms, better pay, and better hours. "Why?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His defenses were down, the carefully constructed walls of charm and deflection momentarily abandoned. Because talent like yours doesn't come along often, and neither does a heart like yours. The company needs both. Emma needs both. And maybe. Olivia hesitated, a vulnerability showing through her usually confident demeanor. Maybe I wanted to see what it would be like to know both too. If this unexpected turn has caught your attention, subscribe to see more stories that explore the complex dance between career, family, and unexpected connections. Your support helps bring these narratives to life. That night changed everything. Over dinner, which Olivia had thoughtfully brought enough of to include Emma, James began to see his boss in a new light. Not just as the intimidating CEO with impeccable style and business acumen, but as Olivia, a woman who noticed details, who valued family as much as success, and who had been trying to reach out to him in ways he'd been too blind to see. "So you're Daddy's boss?" Emma asked, studying Olivia with the direct curiosity only children possess. She'd inherited her father's ability to cut straight to the heart of matters. "I am," Olivia confirmed, meeting Emma's gaze with equal directness. "But I'm hoping we can be friends too." Emma considered this seriously, twisting her mother's bracelet. "Do you like space?" "I'm doing my science project on black holes." Olivia's face lit up with genuine interest. "I love space. Did you know I wanted to be an astronaut before I went into business?" As Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her project, James watched the interaction with a mixture of surprise and something else, hope, perhaps. For the first time in 2 years, he could imagine a future that wasn't just about surviving day to day. The transition wasn't smooth. James struggled with his new role, with accepting help, with allowing someone new into the carefully controlled world he'd built for himself and Emma after losing his wife. His tendency to use humor as a shield became more pronounced whenever conversations veered toward the personal. "You know, most people don't use sarcasm as punctuation," Olivia remarked one evening after he'd deflected a simple question about his college years with 3 consecutive jokes. "Most people haven't perfected it into an art form," he countered, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "What are you afraid I'll see if you stop performing for 5 minutes?" she asked quietly. The question landed like a physical blow. "I'm not performing," he said, but they both knew it was a lie. Olivia had her own challenges, balancing her authority as CEO with her growing personal feelings, navigating the company gossip that inevitably arose, and learning how to be part of a family dynamic she'd never experienced before. Her instinct to control situations clashed with Emma's independent spirit and James's protective parenting. "You can't solve everything with a schedule and a spreadsheet," James told her after she'd created an elaborate study plan for Emma's science test. "And you can't solve everything with a joke and avoidance," she shot back, her green eyes flashing. Their first real argument came a month later, after a company event where James had deliberately kept his distance from Olivia, falling back on his role as the office charmer, making everyone laugh while saying nothing of substance. "You can't have it both ways, James," she said afterward, her voice tight with hurt. She stood in his kitchen, arms crossed, her professional mask slipping to reveal the woman beneath. "You can't accept my help and then treat me like a stranger in public." "It's complicated," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "The team already thinks I got special treatment because of whatever this is between us." He gestured vaguely between them, unable to name what was growing there. "And what exactly is this between us?" Olivia challenged, stepping closer. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm all in while you're still hiding behind your grief and your fears." The words hit him like a physical blow. "That's not fair." His voice had lost its usual lightness. "Isn't it? You use your wit and charm to keep everyone at arm's length. You make jokes when things get too real. You're present for everyone except yourself." Her voice softened. "I'm not trying to replace what you lost, James. I'm just asking for a chance to build something new. If you're feeling the emotional weight of this confrontation, drop a comment sharing a time when someone called you out on your own barriers. Sometimes the hardest truths come from those who see us most clearly." That night, After Olivia left and Emma was asleep, James found himself staring at old photos of his late wife. "What would you think of all this, Sarah?" he whispered to the smiling face in the frame. Sarah had been his opposite in many ways, quiet where he was outgoing, thoughtful where he was impulsive, steady where he was mercurial. But they had balanced each other perfectly. Until cancer took her, leaving him to figure out how to be both himself and a bit of her for Emma's sake. For the first time, he could almost hear her response, "I'd think it's about time you started living again instead of just existing." The next morning, he arrived at Olivia's office before anyone else. She looked up, surprised to see him there so early. She'd been up most of the night herself, second-guessing her decision to push him, to demand more than he might be ready to give. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "You were right." "About what part?" she asked, setting down her pen. She'd already applied her professional armor, perfect makeup, hair pulled back, expression carefully neutral. "All of it. I've been hiding. From the team, from you, even from myself sometimes." He took a deep breath. "I don't want to hide anymore." What followed was a delicate dance of professional boundaries and personal connection. At work, they maintained appropriate distance, with James proving his promotion was well-deserved through innovative campaigns that brought in new clients. His new schedule allowed him to be home when Emma returned from school, rebuilding the relationship that had been strained by his absence. After hours, they slowly built something that defied simple labels. Olivia learned to relax her need for control, to embrace the messiness of family life. James learned to be vulnerable, to let his real self, not just the charming facade, be seen. Emma was the first to call it what it was. "Are you and Olivia in love?" she asked one evening as James tucked her in. Her room was a testament to her evolving interests, space posters alongside ballet shoes, books on science next to fairy tales. The question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "Because you look at her the way princes look at princesses in my books. And she looks at you the same way." Emma twisted her mother's bracelet thoughtfully. "And you don't make as many jokes when she's around. You're just, you. Out of the mouths of babes." James realized his daughter had seen what he'd been afraid to acknowledge. 6 months after that rainy night when Olivia had appeared on his doorstep, James found himself standing in that same spot, this time preparing to leave for their first official date without Emma, a significant milestone for a single parent. Olivia arrived wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes seem even more intense than usual. Her hair was down, the way he'd come to prefer it. Without her corporate armor, she seemed both more vulnerable and more powerful, a paradox that fascinated him. "You look beautiful," he said, the words inadequate for what he felt. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with the teasing smile that had become familiar. "Though I'm still not convinced you own anything other than blue shirts." "They bring out my eyes," he quipped, falling easily into their pattern of banter. "Or so I've been told by a very reliable source. Your daughter has excellent taste." "It wasn't Emma who told me that." Olivia's cheeks flushed slightly. "Well, your boss has excellent taste too." The evening was perfect in its simplicity, dinner at a small restaurant where they talked not about work or responsibilities but about dreams and fears and favorite books. Olivia confessed her childhood dream of space exploration, abandoned after her mother left and finances became tight. James shared stories of his early days in advertising, when creativity mattered more than spreadsheets. Walking along the riverfront afterward, James found himself reaching for her hand naturally, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Her fingers intertwined with his, warm and certain. "I never thanked you properly," he said as they stopped to watch the city lights reflect on the water. "For what?" "For firing me," he laughed, but there was no deflection in it this time. "Or not firing me. For seeing what I needed before I knew it myself." Olivia turned to face him, her expression serious despite his light tone. "That's what love does, James. It sees the truth of someone, even when they're trying to hide it." The word hung between them, neither taking it back nor rushing past it. Love. Was that what this was? This feeling of coming home to a place he'd never been before? I'm still learning how to do that, he admitted. Seeing clearly. Being seen. For once, he didn't follow the vulnerable statement with a joke. We both are, she said, reaching up to touch his face. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, as if memorizing him by touch. But I think we're getting better at it. When he kissed her, it wasn't with the desperate passion of new love but with the steady warmth of something that had been building slowly, deliberately, with full awareness of the complexities involved. It was a beginning rather than an ending. If this journey from lost to new beginnings has touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that explore the beautiful messiness of human connection. Your support means everything. 3 months later, James found himself sitting in his living room, recording the video that would eventually go viral, the story of how getting fired changed his life. Emma sat beside him, her mother's bracelet still on her wrist but no longer twisted anxiously. Olivia was on his other side, her professional facade completely absent in this space that had become as much hers as theirs. The thing about second chances, he said to the camera, Emma leaning against one side of him and Olivia on the other, is that they rarely look the way you expect. Sometimes they come disguised as failures or endings. Sometimes they arrive on your doorstep in the rain, demanding you pay attention. He looked at Olivia, who smiled encouragingly. The woman who had once intimidated an entire boardroom now sat cross-legged on his couch, wearing jeans and one of his blue shirts. The real lesson I learned wasn't about work-life balance or even about love, though those were important too. It was about seeing, truly seeing, the people in your life and allowing yourself to be seen in return. It was about recognizing that strength isn't about carrying everything alone but about being brave enough to let others help you carry the load. Emma piped up, and about listening when your boss tries to tell you something important. They all laughed, the sound of a family finding its new rhythm. James no longer used humor as a shield but as a genuine expression of joy. Olivia had learned that not everything needed to be perfectly planned. And Emma had discovered that family could expand in ways she'd never imagined. So wherever you are in your journey, James continued, whether you're drowning like I was or standing on the edge of something new, remember that sometimes the best things in life begin with words that seem devastating at first. Even words like, "You're fired." As the video ended, James added one final thought, "We'd love to hear your stories too. Where are you watching from, and have you ever had a moment that seemed like an ending but turned out to be a beginning?" Like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Because the most powerful thing we can do is remind each other that none of us are alone in our struggles or our second chances. The camera clicked off, but their story continued, not perfect, not without challenges, but real and alive with possibility. And in the end, isn't that the most anyone can ask for? Not a fairy tale ending, but the chance to write a new chapter, one day at a time.